Okay, let's go. So today is gonna be a little special. Instead of doing a playthrough and well, no, that's pretty much what I did while going live. Anyway, instead of doing a playthrough, today we are looking at some reviews of Shining Soul 2. There are some of them that I watched, one in specifically that I wanted to talk about from KBash, which has done a lot of interesting things, especially, this one. I wanted to talk about this one as well. But today we're just looking at the one from both Shining Soul and Shining Soul 2. Anyway, I think most of the review will have a say to the first one as well. So I will pause the video to say,
What compels someone to
say
play
what I have to
Shining
say.
Soul at Christmas time, huh? I mean, look at this thing. Are you kidding me with this? At least someone in the audience is thinking that, or close to that, because it's old and crummy.
This video, I should also talk about that. It's pretty recent, and I kind of want to say that the GBA retro visuals and stuff, it's actually something that people long for. So
There's more to it, though, if you go digging. And not just with the sequel. Some people actually remember Shining Soul 2. It was a more lively game, more characteristic.
Far more lively
back then. And that's not saying a ton for the game.
So let's go back and rewind for anybody that never saw this in a live.
Multiplayer back then.
Okay, so we get 2 GBA and 1 GBA SP that has retro lighting, which the first version don't have, and I'm not sure I know those. I think this is to have more than 2 cables at a time, because this game features 1 to 4 multiplayer, and the basic cables like that can only link 2 consoles together. But you also at the time had some infra connectors.
And that's not saying
I don't know if they're
the
compatible with
Legend of
4
Zelda
players though.
Swords via the Link to the Past port was incredible, but Shining Soul gave you character options, color options. That simple feature is so much. I like being blue. Okay. Shining itself is a long-standing franchise you don't hear much about these days.
The last game from the Shining franchise was a few years ago already. And I think they did mostly made remakes of previous games.
It's one I'd love to dig into given the time and interest, but chance this thing does even okay is like a solid 2%. But it's a JRPG series laden with Western fantasy tropes. I think it's distinct.
Actually, it's not JRPG mostly. It's part JRPG and part TRPG. Tactical RPG like Fire Emblems. Anyway, and this one in particular, it's one episode of Shining Force. It's TRPG.
Distinguishing feature is centaurs. That didn't sound like a lot in my head, but you don't see a lot of centaurs in games. Sadly, they're unplayable here, so. The 2 games we're covering today are spin-offs of that series. Shining did all kinds of spin-offs. Not even. Shining as...
So I think this is Shining Force.
Shining did all...
No, it's not Tears. It's the one on PS2 before Shining Force 6.
Kinds of spin-offs.
I don't remember
Shining
the name.
As a series ranges from dungeon crawler titles to strategy
the
games
very
to
first
action
ones
RPGs.
were dungeon crawler
Enough.
simple at the
the
time.
need to have a finger in every pie. Shining Soul's real selling point nowadays, and only for eccentrics and enthusiasts, is the Suda 51 tie-in. Yeah, this is the first Grasshopper game published in the West. You know, Grasshopper, company that made No More Heroes.
Well, for me, they only made Shining Soul 2, but your reference.
God, yes. Apparently, Grasshopper doesn't publicly claim this game on their resume, but Goichi Suda himself confirmed his team worked on it. At least they do claim the sequel. Not that Suda directed the games. That was someone else, but there he is. Sprited in the credits, caught red in handy.
Yeah,
Can't
and the
sweep
soccer
this one
ball
under the rug, boys.
is an equipment, by the way.
Loading
An
in is
accessory.
never easy these days. There's always the urge to record if you do this thing I'm doing. You can't escape it, and with all that dumbass setup, it's easier to just turn something on that's playable on the laptop. Thing's old, but runs better than ever. Full screen too, no squinting, and free. 2 buttons and a control stick, and that's really all you need. Remember
And you can touch that and say that a lot of people would say, this is simplistic, it's not very good gameplay. But how many games do you have on your phones, on even sometimes on your computer, that are as simple as that nowadays? Just to tell you that sometimes less is actually more.
Remember being excited for new releases? I bet you're still excited, whoever's watching this, at least a little bit. I haven't bought a new game since Trials of Mana, which was great, and before that was Grand Blue.
Ooh, I could talk a lot about the Mana series. So far, I'm unimpressed, but I think I didn't delve into the right ones.
After I saw that game's death coming a mile away with no rollback, took the gamble, tried to defend it, got burned for probably the last time on a New Age fighter. It's so hard to care anymore. So I'm out here playing Nier Automata and MGS5 in 2021. And yeah, I'm a little sorry I missed out then, but I'm not much of a public discourse
I don't know
guy,
all
so
those games
feels
he's
as good
talking
now
about.
as any time.
I
But
just
I miss feeling excited.
know
Shining
the Mana
Soul's a bit
series
like
a little
that.
bit.
Something I would have thought was so cool at 10 or 11. Just a little game about sealing the darkness away. Being a pixel hero with colors I
Yeah.
picked myself from a pool of 4
Well,
character
for me, at
classes.
about
I mean, everyone's
30,
got
it's
their
still
home
nice.
world, right? Their comfort setting. And these quaint fantasy worlds were everything back then. FFTA, Golden Sun. The world is so incessantly dull. Man, you know it's rough when real grass is competing with...
It's interesting again that he talks about Golden Sun, because there are links to the people that made the Shining series and Golden Sun.
squares. And while I'd be burned by this kind of game nowadays, I mean, it's free. So here I sit.
Yeah.
Lights dim.
It's free. You can pick all these games and play them on your computer better than ever. What's not to like?
Laptop brightness high, burning my eyes and wandering. Never lost though. It's stupid, but before even completing the first stage, I've made a mistake. You can actually name your character specific things for bonus stats. Apparently,
Yeah, these one are... So for the Archer and the Dragonaut, you could argue that it's not very interesting. For the other two, though, this is a net and early increase in your damage stat. So, yeah.
as a nod to the characters of Shining Force, a game which no child who played this could ever know, because the remake didn't hit store shelves until 2 years after this game's release.
Actually, what it says is probably true for the US release that we see on screen, but I wonder if it's true for the Japanese release. Maybe GBA Resurrection of the Dark Dragon was like 2 years before the US version or something. I don't know.
And because the original was on the Sega Genesis. I didn't even know what that was until I was like 17. What the heck? And we're talking like plus 10 strength here, okay? I know you have no measure for what 10 strength is, but suffice it to say, that's much strength. And another set of impossible to know names will give you bonus items.
Yeah, most of them are pretty useless because the Monkey Dog, I don't remember what it does. The Painter's Souls, neither. But the others are either consumables or just items that drop off after
games, man.
like
What else
2
you hiding,
dungeons.
Grasshopper? Someone will dig up your puff room eventually. You just wait. Now, I've actually picked one of the weaker characters, according to the speedrun site, and that's mostly due to attack range and impossibly low utility. I mean, yeah, you can choose to specialize in swords, spears, or axes, but only one of those, the spear.
Yeah, actually, when I've talked about that, but when you're playing Shining Soul 2, I actually recommend that you try using the 3 weapons of the warrior at a time, which is very similar to Shining Soul 1 warrior, but due to the lack of a lot of levels, because your max level is 99, yeah, you need to be specialized in the first game, and he was unlucky to choose spear. That might be a worse one of the weapons.
Spear is
and Swords
really
being
any
the best
good.
one.
Believe me, it's heartbreaking. Like, you can't spend the whole game just tapping A. Shining Soul lets you charge up power a la Secret of Mana.
Ah, okay. So actually, I could address that and say that it's quite the opposite if you play it right. For Shining Soul 2, charge attack builds are a real thing, but for the first one, your charge attacks, yeah, you can spam them all you want because there's no SP to deplete. But they don't do that much damage, and they have actually decreased accuracy. So it's better to spam normal attacks if you can
As you
manage.
invest skill points in your weapon of choice. The spear is noticeably better than the others here. You can hold and unleash this absolute barrage of attacks.
Yeah,
some of
the
which
charge
will
attack is
actually
better.
hit. It's a huge problem
But
in the
this game,
attacks are wildly
the
inaccurate.
normal
Other
attacks are more
weapons,
useful.
The axe and the sword get really terrible charge moves by comparison. Like the sword will send you straight into danger, and the axe is just a big single attack. If you miss, too bad, so spear it is. And your mileage may vary, right? I can't speak for the big dragon guy, but his attacks are big enough. Probably picked by most kids. Seriously, you put like a human, an elf, whatever.
That's a human as well for the
Oh.
wizard.
In particular, the mage and archer get exponentially better as the game drags on. Turns out strong ranged attacks are really good in a slow, kiting-heavy environment. When you're bored or have taken
Yeah, the Hell Blast, so Blast in Shining Soul 2 is still a quadratic skill. And as you can see, when you do normal, you can do normal attacks with your spellbook that will release the level 0 spell somehow, and do not deplete your SP, which is kind of cool. That's one of the few things that is cool about the first game.
When you're bored or have taken enough of a beating, you can pour it home with a wing. Seriously, this little encampment, the perfect shade to burn your eyes off. Weirdos, ninjas running around, I miss this stuff. There's such a push for hard realism in games these days, and it feels so joyless, unfrivolous. Truly, the world is not kind to silly little people and their tomfoolery. Game's kinda like a toothless Diablo 1. No dread, no edge, no blood, just clearing floors and going deeper. Collecting equipment and really caring that your spear has fire damage on it, or like +3 strength. It's a simple joy. You know, I fell off loot games forever ago between the first border.
This interface, man. Can you really understand what's going on at any given time? You have too much going on.
Lands,
And
Diablo 3
so this is one Diablo game. I recognize it, but I don't know
it
which
started to
one.
feel like an impossible time sink, and I cared so much about optimized characters and builds. Felt like it was a scam, ran off to play fighters for a few years, but now that nobody's part of that equation, just me and completion, +3 means a lot again. If I asked you to imagine what the rest of the game looks like, you'd probably be right. A series of dungeons, some more visually interesting than others, a series of bosses, some more frustrating to fight than others, and it's just you and your one attack for like
They're
8
mostly
hours.
frustrating,
Games
the
are so
bosses,
much
though.
more than this now, but even still, it's easy to be charmed by the simple presentation, the attention to detail in the dungeon sprite work, every new enemy that crops up late in a dungeon, even adjusting your inputs to deal with slower and faster enemies. It's almost cool. Unfortunately, the story's not much. Like, as a spin-off,
Yeah,
my
well,
expectations are...
A lot of people are confusing two genre of games, and actually a lot of people think about Shining Soul and Shining Soul 2 as action RPG, and this is not what they are. They are hack and slash. Action RPG and hack and slash both share element of RPG and a repetitive cycle gameplay of I go kill monster, I get XP and loot, I go back to a hub, I do my stuff of character optimization, and then I repeat the cycle. But the difference is that an action RPG is primarily an RPG, meaning that the story is important, the character development is important, and then the rest of it is action. Whereas for the hack and slash, we almost don't care about the story. It's just there to justify the game. So yeah, Shining Soul and Shining Soul 2 are hack and slash. Don't expect much about the story. It's kinda gimmicky.
low. And to be fair, Shining is pretty fundamentally just about good versus evil. It's so barren. Doesn't do any kind of telling with its mechanics or gameplay, just that evil is overwhelming and you alone can triumph against it. If the enemy count's got anything to say about it, the game lives up to that conceit. Very few people will ever see the credits. Mostly
Yeah.
it's sold like shit.
Yeah, the last dungeons, man. that take dozens and dozens of minutes. They're just so long,
because there's
with
so
hundreds
little
of
to
enemies,
carry you
literally.
on. Old games are rare experiences. There's two shots that stick out to me. The image of the campsite, no words, it's perfect, and the screen immediately following the final boss. It's a rough finale, and said boss, provided you position correctly, is a joke. Most of the bosses are, but the game isn't. It's tough. It's annoying, constantly repositioning,
Yeah, it actually
micro-spacing,
doesn't show it there, but this boss, when you don't have enough damage output, it's actually annoying because their heads regenerate.
the stab in the right direction on an 8-point pad, and AI set to get in your business, and hauling your own ass through 8 dungeons to save no one in particular doesn't feel all that special. But when the dark dragon goes up in flames, you're left with the sun in the horizon, a breeze in the sea. Like, maybe there was a point to all this. Maybe there is hope. Maybe. It's not quite there. You can visualize it, but never touch it. I like that scene a lot. But just when you thought my soul was pummeled to death, I'm back! Shining Soul 2, baby! This game's amazing.
No, that isn't true, KBash. Fortnite and Halo are amazing. This is
Bro, no, don't say those kind of things. Anyway, yeah, Shining Soul 2 rules, maybe.
ugly pixels.
Lots of games make the Game Boy Advance look kick-ass. 'Cause it is. Zoomy ass. But Shining Soul 2 is
Yeah, it's GBA to this day is a prime example on the limitation of your console push you instead of relying on your hardware to really push your software to the limit. Because
one of the kings. It's got everything you need. Enhanced gameplay, including normal compass alignment. There are all kinds of GBA games that take the square map and go, thank you, now my inputs are fucked. Not Shining Soul 2. Game's crispy. Inputs crispy. There's a whole roster of characters this time, from all the greatest hits to the coolest looking guy. Man, Dark Wizard? I'm Spartan. I went with Kevin from Trials of Mana, werewolf guy. I'm just trying to mash attacks and vibe, okay? This game with multiplayer, man. They have a priestess.
yeah, I remember that actually when there was an Nightbrawler playthrough from Brave Night Owl that I commented previously. I mean, half of it. I actually didn't finish it, but the gist of it was there. He also did the same. He named Zach, the Zach character, so the brother, Kevin.
Class with supportive skills available, diverse ranged options, diverse melee options. I would buy a GBA again just to play this with friends.
I
Just
did.
ideating about this is giving me sads. Let's go, bro. The game features a story, which is a video game story. You see, there was an evil man called Jill's Spy. What the fuck? Who heard a
Yeah,
street
couldn't like
preacher
this, but I
preaching
don't know
the
if it's
return of
correct.
darkness to the land, and he killed him, then went to the castle and befriended the king's best man, centaur, named Deathheart. And gave him the forbidden fruit.
Just
But
like in the
Deathheart
Bible.
knew better until he got a little curious, I guess, ate some fruit, and went fully evil. I can't. What's really impressive about 2
Yeah,
is the level
but just
design,
like
at
I
least
said, the
coming off
story
the
is
first. Before, you
gimmicky.
trudge through a couple visually interesting zones, but more often it'd be the ugliest shit you've ever seen, repeated ad nauseum.
Yeah, actually, in the first game, I said that the first 2, maybe 3 dungeons are kind of cool, but after that, it's visual diarrhea because it's kind of cool to have some screen, but they're so big that you don't pay attention to details anymore. You're just like, oh, please let me finish it.
Okay? To the point of nausea for 10
Yeah.
floors and kill a boss. And fight something like 200, 300 enemies every dungeon. It's boring. You're boring me, Shining Soul. There's still a good chunk of monsters, but the devs got a little spicy with it. A little kooky, off the goop. 100% Satsui no Hado Omega killing intent with it. Got a little goblin fortress with palisades and buildings.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the big difference between the first and the second game. There is actually dungeon design. The first one, it's just like, we have this environment. It's almost like they made the dungeon and the monster populated it separately. Whereas something as simple as having a goblin fort full of goblinoids, so goblins and kobolds, yeah, it's design, and it works. Well, unlike the video, I guess.
all laid out contiguously, man, any kind of believability on the GBA is a triumph. This level is beautiful. You could schmuck up the goblins during their little meeting. Well, I do love violence. You got a shimmering ice cave with thin, slippery paths. You got a forest with enemies hiding in the foliage. They're varied, they're believable, and they present different challenges to the player consistently. They even have little scripted sequences.
Yeah, actually, towards the challenges, you could say that you have dungeons that are heavy on one element. So you have light, fire, ice, darkness, albeit that's a supplemental one. You have poison, also a supplemental one. You don't have thunder, but you have the other 5. For the first one, you have enemies of the 3 elements that are in this game everywhere. So you just don't pay attention to it.
Like these mummies lifting a tombstone.
It's like every dungeon is the same challenge.
And make them drop it, revealing a side quest item that you won't get if you go charging in. And that feature comes back with one of the forest bosses, these dwarves, who pull out progressively rare items, and you can ambush at the right time to get the one you think is best. It's so small, such a nothing feature, but so cool to experience.
Well, actually, for this one specifically, it's not even a nothing feature, because it's one of the key to unlock a side dungeon. It's even better than you might think.
The only real issue is single player, and hey, I still had fun, but it's worth mentioning that I did 2 moves for the entire game: tap attack and charge attack. That's it. And that's enough for me. The gameplay is more in positioning and tactically using your minimal options, as opposed to doing anything mechanically complex. And that's really no different than, again, Diablo 1 warrior gameplay. It would just be so improved by multiplayer.
Yeah. Well, I just kind of want to say real quick that, well, it's not about optimization and stuff. I guess that you just wanted to play, but when you're playing the brawler, if you want to do charge attack, it's actually better to do it with the knife. Whereas the claws, the best selling point of it is that normal attacks are better.
People to scream with through the thing. That's all. Well, there is a summon soul mechanic or a big AoE attack. I don't know.
He didn't talk about it, but the soul summon mechanic is actually in the first game. But with you have accessory that have a stat boost, but are also soul. You'll get it once I'll play it.
Doesn't happen all that much. It's strange too, skills in the first game were pretty limited. You'd basically focus on one offensive skill and some passive stat benefits like resistance or something.
Yeah, and that's because in the first game, all 4 the characters have 2, so they also have 8 skill, but 2 of them, the last 2 ones, are always resistances for the 4 characters. That takes some space.
But in 2, you've got a couple of weapon skills, then all these passive traits: stun chance, evade chance.
Actually, some of them are triggered
character to character, and
there.
They could have given every character a projectile or something, something to do. Give the werewolf a bear trap, anything. Any kind of additional utility, that's what's missing. But to be fair, your movement's good enough. There's an amount of enjoyment in pulling back from a group, charging a big attack, then turning around and barreling through. It's just a shame that the Dark Wizard, for example, will spend the entire playthrough charging a Dark Ball attack to...
Well, if you're doing a full spellcaster playthrough at the Dark Wizard, you're actually better at some point to invest into Dagger Dance. Because otherwise, when you encounter enemies that resist darkness damage, you're screwed. And also, it combos pretty well together. Anyway.
Speed through. Nothing clever or tricky or cool. Just you and the world and your one attack that you alone, out of all the people on this planet, are exploring right now. Compelling enough for me, anyway. Actually, I haven't mentioned it yet, but it's pretty easy to die in these games. I mean, yeah, I'm more of a glass cannon character, but you can just... in a blink if you're too cocky.
Yeah, well, this enemy in particular is very challenging at low level.
Still rough. Guess I should have upped my resistance by constantly taking that kind of damage. This is a real thing in game, please.
Yeah, and not only this is a real thing in game, and in the game's manual they tell you, do this, it's better for you. But also, if you pass up to 10 minutes in game stamp doing that, you have the boy up there circling around the tree that drops a special item. the dev really wanted you to take 10 minutes just sitting in false flames.
Please do not teach this to children.
Oh, dude, fire resistance!
And there's areas from the first game, if you're so inclined.
Yeah, and also consuming poison mushrooms for your poison resistance in the mushroom forest.
Visit, side quests, bonus content hidden away. Hey, that's the guy from the intro. Dead.
And
Well,
for the
that
first
one,
game,
we'll find a way
actually,
to bring
he's in
you
the camp.
back.
Oh, I forgot. He totally called.
So there's also the two sisters and the grandpa missing. And there's the grandpa and the grandson from the pirates missing. I think that's everyone.
Hearing's just about the same. Little +3 excitement and all that, but this time you'll go poor trying to identify all your items. I really appreciate that Diablo made it easy, and even free at a point. Ended up in poverty for most of the game, and with substandard weapons constantly. I mean, when you get lucky, you feel it. I'll give him that. Plenty of weird items abound, too. Baby paste? I'm really impressed by the bosses this time.
Yeah, the baby pest is so weird. When you throw at enemies, it slows them down for some time. It's reminiscent of the first game, which has a stall spell from the wizard. Kind of weird that
Time around, though maybe
they
I'm
did it
getting
this
old
way.
or less cynical or what, but even something as small as the boss spin slashing into a sliding tumble animation is so satisfying. I don't expect a lot from the GBA.
Yeah, actually, a lot of people are praising Shining Soul from as a spin-off game because they are antagonists of different games are bosses. But I actually think that Shining Soul boss fights are not very good.
Hey, you know, those budgets aren't gigantic, and injecting personality and realism with simple things like that really helps breathe life into the space. And they're tough, too. Like, there's no trouble with fighting them again. You can just warp back, but the fight resets every time. This ain't like Diablo 2, okay? No free town portals. You win or you die. Respect. And they're not impossible, they just feel hard right away while you learn how to maneuver the boss's attacks. I'd say they're just right for the intended GBA audience, and make single player challenging, but viable. I'm sorry, that grab took out my whole life bar?
Yeah, she's pretty
I do
harsh.
have to point out that the dialogue is pretty strained. For example, this masterpiece. I'm the captain of this ship. Robert's my name. I was born on the beach, not far from
Yeah, I
here.
mean, what do you
And
accept
yes, I am insane.
with a guy that spends
Abnormally
decades
insane,
on the
though.
sea?
For that reason, I can keep my sanity. If I had an older master, he'd definitely agree. Hey, stop it. Stop this useless quarreling. You'll make the ocean restless. But that's all right. Get covered in squid ink and you'll understand. This is presented with his static image, no weird corruption aura, anything, just raw dialogue. And I'm telling you, it's obvious, especially after the fact, that he was corrupt. But those sentences are Mario. I'm insane. Abnormally insane, therefore I can stay sane. What are you talking about? But yeah, the bosses are pretty cool otherwise. Eventually, if you're bad like me, you'll run into a wall where you need to grind or complete side quests, boost your stats, or at least you think you do. Speedrunners do some amazing stuff with this game, having memorized enemy patterns and the like. They can blow through the hardest segments damageless.
Yeah, there's even Taz video of that, which are incredible.
Even when I came back to the endgame area, I was still getting pummeled despite my increased health, either because my resistances weren't high enough from not being blasted enough, or I just suck and played stupid most of the time.
Well, actually, that's because the blast wind spell doesn't have any resistance.
Multiplayer, man. It always comes back to multiplayer, but what are the chances of that? These games aren't incredible, really, but they're simple pleasures.
Yeah, I still
Easy
have
learn,
to set up.
easy
I still have to set up how much cheap multiplayer, but I have a hope. I hope that I will succeed.
to run, just enough spice. Sometimes all it takes is a color choice, a different weapon. Really, there is no sell. I imagine 0 people will bother to try them out, even the second, which is pretty good, because
No, try the second.
Halo,
The first
whatever,
one,
that's
no,
fine.
nah.
You wait. There'll be a time when you're so burned on gaming or so nostalgic that you'll take that trip back, and then it'll just be you in that fragment in time. It's not spiritual or anything, but it is meditative, immersing in and reflecting on the things that time forgot. There was a time, in the weeks and months following July 2003, where Goichi Suda kicked a soccer ball through a credit scroll. It's the small things. Always. And then the dark gods started fronting, so I popped them like a fucking grape. Hey, it's KBash. Huge thanks goes out to my $4 patrons whose names are on the screen. The show's finally getting somewhere thanks to the community's generosity. And special thanks goes to my extra generous...
Okay, as for me, special thanks for KBash. I actually asked him if I could review his video, and he kindly said, yeah, sure. Shining Soul 2 is incredible. So, thanks. Now, I knew this one, but let's review another one. And I don't know this person, though, so I don't know if it will be interesting. Anyway, we'll see. It's shorter as well. I have just a few lineup that I encountered by just typing this. We'll see. Oof. Okay, I'm maxed. I don't know where the review starts.
There's something about action RPGs that really break.
Again, it's not an action RPG. Although I do understand why people get it this way. It's very close.
The boundaries of traditional roleplay gaming. When real-time action takes place of rigid turn-based tactics, a balance has been struck that will satisfy the tastes of many. Games such as these are sometimes heavily delayed for international release, and the Shining Souls series is a prime example. However, the connection between the
I'm sorry, but we see the skills, so just real quick.
Prime example.
Flail, Eel, Bless, and Shining Aura. Ooh, okay, that's a weird build there. I guess he wanted to try a little different things, but going to combat without your Bless on is such a waste.
The connection between the first Shining Soul and its sequel is not extremely important, which allowed American fans to enjoy the second seamlessly. From Sega and Atlas, Shining Soul 2 is almost a nostalgic trip back to the days of the action RPG section of the big happy Shining family, sharing...
Actually, I think that the spin-off was the first action RPG slash hack and slash game of the Shining series. After that, on PS2, they made multiple ones, but maybe the first one was on Genesis.
The dinner table with Shining Wisdom for the Sega
wasn't.
Saturn, the ever important fan favorite
I don't know.
for Sega Genesis fans,
I have to
Shining
check
Force,
out.
and dungeon crawling titles like the Disney-like animated Shining in the Darkness. Who could turn away from the adorable sprites, the customizable style of the item menus, and the familiar button tapping that comes with swinging a sword or a ball and chain at your foes? With a storyline that simply involves good against evil,
doing magic.
Shining Soul 2's strengths do not necessarily lie in its plot, which will flood your screen with
For sure, no.
endless tap.
Again, it's because it's a hack and slash and not an action RPG.
That is unfortunately unstoppable at its most monotonous. The kingdom of Clan Tal is in danger of being lost to the imbalance between light and dark, the dark which tempted Clan Tal's greatest knight, Deathheart, to eat the forbidden fruit. Whether or not this is a biblical reference...
Actually, that's not the plot of the beginning, it's what you get after some time, but whatever.
Or something else entirely, I will leave to
Spoilers
to explain. But at most, it makes for a cute backstory. Eventually, the cloudy plot will blow away to reveal a world that is populated with armored warriors, bloodthirsty goblins, and everything you'd expect to find in a JRPG set to the...
It's not a JRPG either. JRPG is not the same as action RPG. When you think about JRPG, you could think of Final Fantasy 12, for example.
The theme of medieval times. There are 8 playable classes and 1 hidden class to choose from, each with their own method of
Actually, one hidden character to be precise, but we'll still use a Dark Wizard class.
attack, spell casting if possible, and passive attributes that all increase with experience.
Ooh, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Also, each character has a default name, and when I saw
Is it me or is the video like that?
the warrior's name, I knew it was fate that led me to the sword-swinging Eric. The world of Shining Soul 2 is wide open and fun to explore, and you can't wait to clear one dungeon to get to the next one. Similar to other hack and slash action RPGs.
Finally, you see, hack and slash. Hack and slash and action RPG are interchangeable for many people, but be precise, please.
Like the Seiken Densetsu series, and even compared to Western RPG legend Diablo, you will control your character against
Yeah, everybody has been calling Shining Soul 2 the Diablo of the GBA.
hordes of enemies in dungeon after dungeon. The weapon and item loadout is unique in that you can customize 3 slots for each, and you can switch your equipment.
Wait. Let me
against
rewind
hordes
that.
of enemies in dungeon after dungeon. The weapon and item loadout is
Item, okay,
in that
never
you
mind.
can customize 3 slots for each, and you can switch your equipment and even heal yourself on the fly. There were
Yes.
times that I felt pretty
It's
outmatched
true.
by my foes, even if I was able to use my soul power.
You don't see this item swap mid-combat too often. Sometimes with skills, but
This is
usually
where the
not with
multiplayer
weapons.
factor comes in, and I happen to think that such an attribute is an excellent idea, especially in RPGs. Though it is a hack and slash adventure in its true colors, Shining Soul 2 is meant for link cable play, and is much easier and fun to beat with a friend.
Actually, I think that solo is perfectly viable, but please, when you use the priestess, use your blaze before going into combat.
Adding to the game's real-time style and overall difficulty is the fact that pressing start does not stop the action.
Yeah, that's
Go
a
to the main
huge
menu
selling
in the middle
point.
of battle and expect to get cheap-shotted.
I always find it extremely funny in many games, still to this day, that you can just stop the fight, going in your inventory, heal to the max, and then, like, imagine the scene. Magically, the enemy you have wounded almost to death is just like poof, fresh and new. Never liked that.
Also expect to learn the hard way that the left and right buttons are there for this reason exactly. But don't let the efficiency of the multiplayer drag you away if you prefer to tackle this adventure.
Actually, I could tackle that. Efficiency of the multiplayer is not true because in multiplayer, enemies have increased attack and HP. So it's not as more easier to go multiplayer.
Yourself. Shining Soul 2, although it may be awkward to learn, is a decent action RPG with classic RPG presentation, full of distinctive sprite animation, impressive sound that will tickle the old school gamer's fancy, and an easy to follow, if not recycled, storyline.
Oh, it is absolutely recycled. Okay, well, pretty cool review, but these recordings though are were weirdly glitched. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. So it's GVG. Okay, Patreon request. I think that he did Shining Soul 1 as well. Ooh. I cannot just want to say it again. Sorry. This intro is so good.
There's always been an odd allure to the Shining series for me, despite never playing any of its games. I would see Shining Force listed in top 100 lists of great RPGs, hear from Saturn players how good Shining Force 3 was, and just had the sense that it was this grand series that few people ever talked about. But when I was requested to check out Shining Soul 2, I had no idea what I was getting into. I had never even heard of these games before, or
Really?
realized that they were released on...
Well, it's true that it's not very... I mean, even the Shining series as a whole is not that well known.
the Game Boy Advance. So, as I started playing, I was curious whether I'd be discovering a lost gem or had been asked to look at a dud.
A
Shining
hidden
Soul
gem.
2 may be a sequel, but there's not much in the way of story to be found. Hundreds of years have passed since the original game, and the sheer abundance of light has allowed darkness
Since the origin, hundreds of years. Really? Because we still see the same lady identifying our item, but she's an elf, so that checks out. But Boken is also there in the first game. So I would think that there are more decays between the two games.
to creep back into the world. An alchemist makes plans to take advantage of this shift and corrupts one of the Clantal Kingdom's finest knights to his side. At the same time, the Princess of Clantal has gone missing, spurring the king to send you, a warrior newly arrived for a gladiatorial tournament, to search the land not only for his missing daughter, but the source of the newly arising darkness. The story is threadbare to say the least, with little in the way of characterization. Most of the time it consists of learning of a new threat, dealing with that threat.
Yeah, just as I said before, in hack and slash, the story is just there to justify the new dungeon that comes.
And the threat is always amazed at the power of your character. There were attempts at humor throughout, but it always fell a little flat. Sure, a character droning on about how his tutorial may be a tad too long is worth a chuckle, but eventually it just grows tiresome. It's all just window dressing to push players to the next dungeon, where they can fight monsters, find loot, and grow stronger.
Yeah,
The
I can
sheer amount of
slash.
choice in regards to your character is one of the highlights of Shining Soul 2.
Yeah, and even still to this day, in like some MMOs, you don't have that much choice. Think about it this way.
Right from the beginning, you can choose between 8 classes, which determines your fighting style. The Balanced Warrior, the Long-Range Archer, the Spellcasting Sorceress, and the Healing Priestess are some of the more traditional classes, but there are more unique options as well, such as the defense-based Dragonoot.
Actually, all of the classes in Shining Soul and Shining Soul 2 are taken from Shining Force classes. Archer, Warrior, Ninja, and Priest, or Priestess in this case, are traditional classes, and the others aren't. For the Dragonaut, the Dark Wizard, which is a vampire, and for the Brawler, actually called just Fighter in Japanese, they have characteristic more of their race than a class. As for the Sorceress, she's more reminiscent of the Wizard. But I guess they did want to have more specialized spellcasters.
A Dark Wizard, the Quick Brawler, and the All-Around Ninja. What this essentially means is that the game has the potential for tons of replayability
Yep,
as you try out
absolutely.
each class and see which ones click. Helpfully, Shining Soul 2 comes with 8 save slots as well, so it's actively encouraged.
Yes.
I chose to play as the Sorceress, believing that the spellcasting would be a fun alternative to what I presumed would be a typical hack-and-slash gameplay. And that is mostly how the game plays. There are 3 slots for weapons and 3 for items that can quickly be swapped between using the shoulder buttons. The A button uses the selected attack while the B button uses the chosen item. It's a simple system that allows for some on-the-fly changes in strategy, but I also found myself accidentally using an item I didn't.
I still do this, even though I played this game a lot over the years.
mean to a lot. It was annoying, but with the limited buttons of the Game Boy Advance, it really is the most elegant solution. As an action RPG, Shining Soul 2 is somewhat similar to Secret of Mana in that you need to manage how long an attack takes to charge while dealing with hordes of enemies. Basic attacks can be done as much as you want, but they never deal that much damage.
Actually, that depends on how you do. Normal attack builds are a real thing. I've heard a lot of talk about Secret of Mana, but I didn't play this one. I did test some other. So I actually sold the Mana, the one of the GBA, and I wasn't impressed.
Instead, charging the attack will increase its power, and in the case of the Sorceress, send forth either a fireball, an ice chunk, or whatever attack is selected. It then becomes a game of noting how far enemies are from you and keeping them at bay while you charge attacks.
Yeah, and also switching elements, because just right now that was a fire-resistant enemy. Pop up a freeze for those.
Because if you're hit while charging, it starts over from scratch.
Yep.
And that's really it when it comes to combat. There aren't many puzzles and much of the gameplay
Is it really only that? I guess he didn't talk that much about positioning, especially for the sorceress, but actually, with the sorceress, you don't want to be long range. You want to be close to the enemy, but maneuver against them so that your spell. He just used blaze there, so that still apply. Your spell will efficiently pass through enemies, so you want to form a line of enemies next to you.
Consists of going to an area, fighting through hordes of minions, and taking down the boss at the end. Combat is more of a reward for the planning that happens before jumping into the next stage.
Yeah, I
But
can
you
slash.
naturally earn
So what is this build? One level in Rod, Blaze, Freeze, Inferno, and Meditate. Okay. Well, I guess I did just try it out. Inferno, I didn't like it. Understandable. Ooh, these decks. So I'm assuming he threw that you need decks to hit with spells, but actually spells in this game don't check accuracy.
levels as you defeat enemies. Each level grants 4 stat points that can be allotted to the 4 main stats of your character, as well as a single skill point. These are used to increase the potency of your various attacks in that they can be charged longer for a bigger effect. But this also leads into one of my problems with Shining Soul 2, at least in my playtime as a sorceress. It takes forever to buff up skills. It's not so bad at first, as one skill point took me from a level 0 spell to a level 1. But when I put another skill point in to go to level 2, I instead got a smiley face in the slot leading up to the current one that I didn't understand. It turns out that the player has to build to the next level in order to unlock it. This was massively frustrating, as it felt like I just wasn't getting stronger with each new level. It took forever to reach the next skill threshold, and even then, the difference in power stopped feeling noticeable.
I guess so. I guess I could understand this argument. But it also pushes you to really think about how you allocate your start points. And actually what I do, and what a lot of more accustomed to this game players do, is that instead of doing one skill point per skill point, you keep them until you have enough for a full level up of the skill. Because this way, if you actually change your mind between the time you're starting to farm those level and when you actually have skill points in the right quantity, you can allocate them to another skill.
The even bigger issue is that it limited my options in combat. I have 8 different skills I could increase, 3 of which I could then take into battle, but I could only focus on 2 of them while staying within the game's difficulty curve without tons of grinding.
Yeah, between 2 active skill or triggered skill and 1 passive skill, I'd say it's pretty much the norm for a normal mod playthrough. So yeah, this argument is genuine, and I don't recommend the sorceress for starters, because all of her options are good, so you are constantly like, I kind of want to try the other one when you have a spellbook that drops. Yeah, this probably isn't the best character to start, just because you want to play everything and you don't have enough skill points.
Grinding to get more levels and skill points. Worse yet is that I would often find a level 4 spellbook, which is necessary to perform a level 4 charge. However, it would not work unless I had the skill to that point.
That's actually not true. If you, I think some people made this mistake, but no, you can equip a level, like let's say full spellbook like this, and use it to downcast level 1, 2, or 3 spell. That's perfectly something that the game allows you to do,
Making them essentially teases with no way to use them. I wanted to see the full potential of my sorceress,
I guess.
but I only ever saw a fire spell and an ice spell, making the game feel incredibly repetitive as time went on. This repetitive feeling permeates the entire game though. Clantal Castle serves as the base of operations, where there are item, armor, and weapon shops, along with a place that identifies unknown items and a storage area. Between each stage, I would manage my items, sell any unneeded weapons, and try to identify the rare stuff that might provide a good payday or make for an even better piece of equipment. Unfortunately, the identification store can get extremely expensive, to the point that I didn't realize I was losing more than I was gaining.
I can touch that. I never felt like item identification was that expensive. But I guess if you don't have the little tip that leaving your gold bag into the bank protect them, and you go into dungeon with all your gold on you and lose money each time you get down, you can get money crippled real quick.
For a while. It's frustrating because that is how I found the best equipment, but it was a random chance. Just as often, these items could be duds worth less than the cost of the identification spell.
Yeah, that
Managing
can
money
happen.
and items
On average, you still get money from selling identified item, so that's fine.
was paramount, and I found myself carrying special wings as I went through the stages, as using one created a checkpoint allowing me to instantly return to Clantal. There, I could use an inn to fully heal, sell any equipment I picked up, restock on healing items, and move on.
Yeah,
But
that's
as the
standard
game
play,
got to
yeah.
its later stages, I found myself having to do this after almost every screen. The stages are often claustrophobic with so much geography in the way that it's easy to get trapped and piled on by the monsters. This was made all the worse when they spawn in and surround me, leaving little room to escape and begin charging my counterattack. It's a shame too, because when I first began Shining Soul 2, it felt like I had been shown a true hidden gem that few people talked about. And for what it's worth, it may still be one, but the frustrations kept building in me from a design standpoint. Repetitious combat, cheap hits on long-range enemies, level design that actively blocked movement during frenetic battles. Alone, none of these would harm my enjoyment, but together, well, it was an exercise in annoyance to finish. That's not to say there's nothing good about the game though. Boss fights, for one, are fantastic across the board. Each has a dedicated arena where I had to learn attack patterns, know when to dodge and when to strike, and use the geography to my advantage. They were some of the best moments in the game, and while I enjoyed fighting them, they also had their share of issues at times. Mainly in how many of the endgame bosses could combo me with rapid success.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Z Paradox is killing you with his boss fight.
Hits, killing me in seconds. There are no invincibility frames here, and if you're caught, you're most likely dead. That said, there's another point in the game's favor. It is utterly gorgeous on the GBA. Large, expressive sprites, great character artwork, fun designs, backgrounds that give each area personality. I was consistently blown away by the style. The enemy variety was also impressively diverse, rarely relying on simple recolors. It also made me laugh that this golem has this much junk in his trunk. However, the music isn't quite up to par with the graphics, as most of it is pleasant, but forgettable. I can't really recall a single song, but none of them were grating either. Finishing Shining Soul 2 left me feeling mixed on the whole endeavor. I really did enjoy myself in the early game until the systems beat down my enthusiasm. It left me wondering if this was because of my class choice.
Funnily, he uses the European release date
Or because I was
instead of the US one.
of the game's multiplayer. I have to imagine that working through dungeons with friends would make all of it way more fun.
Actually, yes and no. The game has a really big problem of memory, that you can find sometimes that there are no enemies loading more. It's partially because of memory issue. And when you're playing multiplayer, you don't have dungeon music, which is a shame.
But alone, I find
But
myself
outside of that,
appreciative
yeah,
of the
it's more
game and
fun.
the unique experience on the Game Boy Advance, but never really inclined to play again. I don't want to call the game bad, it just didn't click for me all the way through.
Which I
It's
can
also worth
understand,
noting that
actually.
Shining Soul 2 has
I'm
never
not
been
claiming this
re-released,
game to be
and the
perfect.
cartridges can cost about $60 as of right now.
Oof, really? I got one for about $15.
Still, it might be worth a look if any of this interested you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this review, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/gvgaming so we can create more videos like this in the future. All of your support truly means the world, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and we'll catch you on Good Vibes Gaming next time. Bye!
Well, you get a like from me anyway. Okay, pretty interesting review, but yeah, a lot of it was shade because of the sorceress. I actually think that you should start, if anyone wants to play this game, start off with either the brawler or the warrior. They are the most beginner friendly classes. Okay, let's do another one. Starting off with some souls. Well, I guess, yeah, it's something special.
I always wanted to do something like that, and I think I just threw my voice out, so I guess we gotta be quick about this. This is Shining Soul, a game I'm actually not very familiar with
Well, actually, Shining Soul 2, my man, that's quite a difference.
at all. When I saw Shining on the Game Boy Advance, I thought it was a remake of the original Shining Force, because, as far as I knew, that was the only Shining game on there. And I was actually very, very excited about that, because Shining Force, as well as its sequel Shining Force 2, along with Gundam Wing, were all in one day collectively my intro to anime. So I've got actually quite a lot of fondness for the Shining series.
Yeah, actually, did you know that Shining Soul, so not the 2, but the first one, has an anime intro as well? Isn't that nostalgic?
Also, it was made by Camelot, the people who made Golden Sun, although they didn't work on this one. And also, it's not Shining Force, it's Shining Soul. So, unfortunately, pretty much all my nostalgia for this series is kind of hampered by the fact that this is, like, kind of vaguely connected in name alone, and that's about it. But
Yeah,
that said,
it's
I get
true,
to
it's
get
a spin-off,
excited about
yeah.
playing a whole new game I knew nothing about, so that's kind of cool. And, I mean, this is an action RPG. That's my favorite.
No, it's a hack and
Favorite
slash,
genre,
whatever.
and it's on the GBA. It's like my favorite handheld, and it's the point where handhelds kind of became their own sort of console quality experiences.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, well, I wouldn't necessarily say this is the best action RPG on the system. I did some extensive testing with the original Shining Soul just to see what that was about, mainly because I didn't realize this was Shining Soul 2, and you can kind of tell by that intro, because I
Yes.
learned that after I recorded all of this. That's a week worth of work down the drain. But, you know, this is Shining Soul 2, and compared to the first game, which could best be described as basically, kind of, sort of, almost barely functional,
That's a funny description. But yeah, the first game has some... It actually has some interesting idea there and there. And you know, the basic of the gameplay has been reused for Shining Soul 2, so still props to the original team, which actually is mostly the one of the second game. But yeah, Shining Soul 1 is not very good compared to the big bro.
this game's a lot better. It's actually a genuinely quite good experience. Not great, maybe, but genuinely a very, very good experience. Shining Soul
Arguable.
2, very, very
It's
good.
not...
Let's get into this.
Yeah, I guess it's not exceptional as an experience, but it still holds to this day, 20 years later, as a good experience, which not a lot of games can say.
Proper. Now, the story to Shining Soul 2 is kind of a lot of things all sort of happen at once. First of all, the magic glass orb of destiny becomes cloudy, which is apparently a bad thing. I mean, I've played games where the plot was that the water's a little bit muddy, and that's a bad sign, so you know what? We're a step above Lagoon at the very least. Also, the princess has disappeared, and also, the kingdom doesn't really
That
know
might
it yet,
be
but they're
that might be the first time I've heard about this game that the story is actually not that bad.
about to be invaded by, like, this giant force, so you gotta go do something about all of that, which is great. But first, we have to figure out who you are, and there's a lot of options here. There's about 10 different characters, and hey, there's 10 different
8.
colors for each character, so every character has 10 different variations visually.
No,
which
8
means you
as
can
well,
really
actually.
customize your character's visual appearance, which is really, really cool. And
Yeah.
each character fills in a slightly different slot. Sure, it's not super grand. There's just a lot of melee guys, a lot of magic guys.
Nah, actually, that's not true. There's the long range. Actually, you can see my mouse normally. There's the range character, the spellcaster that are all vastly different. We have kind of the tanky one, the support character, and the full elemental one. We have 2 warrior classes, one heavy and one like middle heavy, I guess. And this one is full of being a big tank. This one is more of the jack of all trades, master of none. We have the pure fighter, so this is the close combat specialist, and as for the ninja, actually can do a little bit of everything: long range, close range, and magic.
Guys, you know, they kept it fairly basic, but with slightly different nuance to it, but it's still very appreciated. And every single one of these characters has like a different stat profile as well as leveling up potential, which is great.
Leveling up potential? Hmm? I don't know what it means by that, but I don't see it. The characters all have the same max level, and they have the same like primary the status point and skill points at each level up that they can allocate. They also have the same max stats in the full primary stats, so not
Story-wise,
really.
this game is leagues better than the first game as well. The first game was just, there's a villain, go do some sequential dungeons and get over it. Whereas this game, the plot evolves as you play. And there's actual, like, side quests and stuff. And
Yeah.
stuff where you can develop your connection to the people in this world. Not deeply,
Yeah, actually, there's only one side quest with the ninja Kagemaru in the first game. Yeah.
but still, there's things here. Again, all completely absent from the first game. You then are tasked with going into sequential dungeons, going in, killing monsters, leveling up, and gaining experience and equipment. A little unfortunate you can find equipment that you can't use, because it's really just there to clutter your inventory, which is very, very limited, although you can sell it. One of the biggest issues I've had with this game, also with the original, and one of the few things that wasn't fixed between the two, was this is an action RPG, a genre that focuses certainly on stats, but to me, at least personally, has always been more of a show of ability of skill, This is what I always loved about action RPGs back when I was a kid who was too impatient to grind and level and wanted to skip fights just to move through story. I wanted a game that would allow me to, through my own skill, avoid attacks and hit my opponents and win through skill alone, even if my numbers weren't big enough. And
Okay, so there is that in this game actually. So if I understood, you really do need to grind your stats to compensate from the sheer power of some monsters, but you can see, and I also commented some playthrough that people finishing normal mode at level 30 or so. So you can compensate with skills.
this game kinda doesn't do that because there's not really any defensive tech. You just sort of clumsily, slowly meander through the dungeons, and the best way you can just sort of avoid attacks is to slowly sort of nudge yourself out of the way, and even that doesn't necessarily work because hitting your opponents isn't necessarily a function of being able to connect your hitbox with your opponents. That's the first check. However, it also requires a significant stat check to the dexterity stat.
Yeah, well, it's funny that he says that while using a spellcaster, because again, spells don't check accuracy. If your spell encounters a hurt box, it hits, and that's all.
That because that governs hitting something. And the fact that you can stand in your opponent and wail on them with, well, in my case, a book because I played a dark mage, or hit them with a magic spell but miss just because the dexterity didn't scale properly, it's very, very weird. And going back to defense, while there is something like a shield,
Oh, it's an interesting argument. So you would rather not have a dexterity stat and have all your hits connect all the time? I could see that as an argument, yeah.
stat, which an NPC spent way too long trying to explain to me. Seriously, I think the writers got paid by the word here. It's all a background stat that happens passively. It basically checks, did your numbers hit the right threshold? If so, you blocked some damage, or you
Wait.
got paid by the word. And going back to defense, while there is something like a shield stat, which an NPC spent way too long trying to explain to me.
A shield stat, so I'm guessing he's talking about the defense stats?
Seriously, I think the writers got paid by the word here. It's all a background stat that happens passively. It basically checks, did your numbers hit the right threshold? If so, you blocked some damage, or you reduced damage, or you reflected it. But it's not something you actively do. Typically in an action RPG, I'd like to have a manual block or dodge. Something that gives me a sense of agency in being able to keep my...
Yeah, well, the choice of not having this kind of maneuver is also because the triggers are already taken from the weapon slots and item slots. So I could understand this as a bad argument against those games. but it's also what's make them special. So I guess it's a matter of taste.
Character alive as opposed to simply relying on numbers. And it feels almost like a betrayal of its core concept as an action RPG, once again taking it all back to the combat and action being...
Yeah, actually, the defense tech might be almost absent in this game if you want to see it that way, but the offense tech is better than in most action RPG. In most action RPG, and so again, it's a hack and slash, but I'm jamming the two together since people do that. What you do in general is you're doing 1-on-1 combat, and in your peripheral vision, kinda, if you want to see it that way, you check for other enemies. So actually in Shining Soul 2 you have much more control about doing damage on multiple enemies at a time, especially with spellcasters that have attacks that pierce through enemies. So the attack tech, I would say, due to if you have careful positioning, is better than in other action RPG.
Centered more around your abilities as a player as opposed to your character's inherent stats. And in turn, it makes you feel like you have zero agency in your character's survivability. It's just, does the computer say I get hit, or did I survive? And taking away your control over your character's survivability makes it a far less immersive experience, and it makes it kind of, like I've said, a betrayal of the core genre. At least where I'm sitting. Another oddity with the gameplay is the fact that this game really doesn't have any sort of punishment for failure. Like, you can lose all your life, and you'll get knocked out, and you'll get pulled out of the dungeon.
It's not really true. Each time you lose half of your money, you lose one item of your equipment of the spot. You could get it back, but it's de-equipped, making it harder each time to get it back, because you can lose multiple in a row if you fell on the same screen. And if you get down by an elemental effect, spells or weapon, whatever, you are crippled in your resistances. So there is punishment.
And the closest thing to real punishment you get is they take away all the money you had in your pockets at the time.
Half.
Except when you get to the village, there's a bank that you can just stash all your money in before you leave, and most of the money you make is from just selling all the equipment you find. So you really shouldn't have much money on you at any point in the dungeon. And then you can just go talk to the angel who hauled you out of the dungeon, and he'll reset where you were. Like, literally, you might lose a few gold, but that's kind of it. There's no other real sort of punishment for failing or getting like stuck in your opponent and getting hit a whole bunch of times when you really shouldn't.
Full intel build, that's actually kind of nice. Although, yeah, it's the first few levels. I actually think that older action RPG does do the same thing. Also, remember, those are games that are also need to be played by children, so you cannot go too harsh on the punishment.
Don't line up quite right or whatever. You know, it's just kind of weird that this game lets you basically run headlong into danger with really the only threat to you being a loss of time. It's really quite odd. And while I'm on a sort of complaining kick, there was one other really big thing that kind of bothered me about this game, and it was, again, one of the few things the original game also did badly that wasn't fixed, and that was the leveling system. Because when you gain enough experience and level up, you can then select whatever stat you want to boost, which is nice. I kind of went with more of a glass cannon sort of thing, focusing entirely on allowing me to use more magic, which does kind of show that there is a sense of creating your own builds here. You could be more tanky or more offensive, which is cool. But then you have like a skill point that you can associate, and putting a skill point into something is simple enough. You put a skill point in it, you get the ability. But once you level it up past the first level, it gets a little weird. Because instead of putting a second skill point in and then getting level 2, instead you have to put 2 skill points in. One for the first slot.
So I'm guessing that this really throws a lot of people off. Okay, I guess it's not something that you're used to. So but the equivalent level of skill that you would need if it was just one skill point, that would be 28 in this game. So I think that would be they did that due to the limitation of the interface on console. There weren't enough to do or it would have been number, you know. You put your skill point and then it says that your skill is level 2 or level 3 or up till mastery at level 28.
One for the second slot. For 3, you have to put 1, 2, 3, and like everything has, I think, something like 7 slots. So by the end, you're pretty much sinking like 25 levels into
28
one
to be precise, to
you know,
master a skill.
The final level of it. It just feels a little bit unnecessarily drawn out to get these abilities, especially because there's not a lot of choice here. Like, don't get me wrong, they have lots of options, but a lot of them are dictated by what kind of weapons you use, and by
a lot of them I dictate. So it's true that some skills are better with some weapons than others. Like, for example, I'm thinking about the Dragonaut. His break armor skill is better with the flail than with the axe, but you can still use it with an axe. It's not like it's bad to use it with an axe. So I'm only halfway agreeing with these comments.
By sinking in points to this, you unlock greater and greater levels of a charge attack. But the bigger issue here, specifically with the charging weapons, is that it has a second function in that it allows you to equip higher grades of your equipment. If you put 1 skill point in one weapon and then level up to the second level of the second weapon, you'll be able to equip higher variations of that second weapon. But if you run to a weapon that requires 3, you won't be able to use it. So, like, the first thing you need to do is sink, like, the first, again, I haven't done the math, but I'm going to say 25 just for the sake of, you know, keeping...
No, that's not true. I can understand why you would think that when you try out the game, but I just want to reassure people that want to try out this game. When you play normal mod, which a lot of people will stop at, not many people will try an advanced mod, because it's really asking you to grind levels. So it's absolutely fine to stick to normal mod. The max level you will need as mastery for your weapons is level 3. So you need 6 full skill points on one weapon to master all weapon that you will get in normal mod. Unless you get extremely lucky and in Chaos Castle you get some grade 2 ores to do some forging, whatever. If you know, you know, but in general, no, level 3 will be your max. So don't worry too much about it. You do not need mastery of any skill to finish normal mod.
Flow here, 25 levels into one weapon before you sink anything into anything else, just so that you don't run into the potential of running into equipment that might save your life.
Okay. So no, that's not how the scalings of weapon level works in this game, but it's true that it's not advertised anywhere. Although, if it's for spells, you could say that it's true. But I think that with level 5 spell you could finish normal mod.
And not be able to use it. The drawing out of this leveling system and tying equipment to it effectively removes any sort of sense of choice that a character build actually proposes. It's very strange that they have equipment basically tied to your skill set, especially because the charge attacks are pretty underwhelming otherwise. Like,
oh, that vastly depends on the weapons. Well, it's true for, let's say, the sword of the warrior. It's not true for the sword of the ninja, for example, which has a fantastic charge attack that can also benefit from backstab. So
for magic, you need like 1 level to start using your charge, and then after that, it just takes exponentially longer to charge and more MP anyway. So again, that's another knock against it. Why would you bother?
Why would you bother? Not only it is more powerful, but because it is more powerful, it also is more effective in terms of SP management, because you need less SP to kill one enemy with a level 3 spells than with 2 level 2 spells, for example.
The game almost actively punishes you for using any of these charged abilities, really, especially if you're a mage. It's very
punishes you for using charged weights.
One level to start using your charge, and then after that, it just takes exponentially longer to charge and more MP.
Okay, so I guess it's you in the mind of the reviewer that we are listening to, because you need longer and longer to upcast your charge attacks for spells or not. It punishes you by being less efficient in real combat. I guess that's what I understand. Well, you can, even with a level 7 skill, you can still cast or charge just level 1 attacks if it's necessary.
Anyway, so again, that's another knock against it. Why would you bother? The game almost actively punishes you for using any of these charged abilities, really, especially if you're a mage. It's very strange, and I feel like if they just let you sink, 1 point, 2 points, simple enough, as opposed to having to sink 25 into one ability to max it out. Considering this game isn't super, super long, by the time you max out one ability, you're probably going to be near the end of the first run through.
Yeah, that's actually true. Leveling fully one ability, if you only do this skill, would get you to the end of normal mode, but never do that. Do yourself a favor. Invest in multiple skills, as most of the time it will be very bad to just solely invest into one skill.
The game and moving on to advanced mode, which sure gives you a second reason to play through the game. It's harder, has enemies hit harder, you get better stuff, but it just seems a little bit weird that you can't really have as much control and customization and wiggle room if you actually want to be well equipped and actually able to handle your opponents without too much grind. One thing I will...
Okay, well, this is... Well, I don't want to repeat myself about you do not need master skill to finish normal mode and stuff and so on, but just you can always experiment and grind your levels at the same time. I think that's the most basic approach when you try this game for the first time.
Absolutely praise this game for, though, is its pacing, because the first game comparatively was awful. The first two stages were super, super easy, and then after that, they dragged forever, and the game just wanted to drag itself out.
Yeah, the last dungeon of Shining Soul 1 it felt like 3 times larger than the 7th. It takes forever.
And it was a lot more monotonous than this game is. This game's actually pretty good comparatively. But what's really neat is that not only are each of the stages fairly well paced, but you can unlock new dungeons as you go by talking to people, unlocking side quests, and doing other little
side
jobs.
dungeons are amazing.
Side dungeons have rarer enemies, harder hitting enemies that do more damage, but a better reward and better experience. So it's worth going out of your way to do these things, and these little side dungeons help mix up the main game dungeons as well. It really does help the pacing. In addition to the fact that
Oh, okay, so he wasn't kidding. He actually is going all out on maxing Demon Breath before anything. Okay, well, this is overkill, for sure. Having Demon Breath level 3 at this point is already pretty overkill, but level 4, oh, damn. You should invest into, even if you do want to spam Demon Breath as much as you can, because actually that's up till Chaos Castle, that's actually fine. There's not that many enemy that resist darkness damage, but if you do that, you should do half of your skills into Demon Breath, half into Meditate.
the story is constantly moving forward. Again, the first game didn't really have any of these things. I should know. I
Yeah, it
played a lot
didn't
of
have
just
story.
to, test this game. But it also has a lot of enemies that help keep this game fresh as well. Every area has a small handful of enemies, as well as a very, very big and impressive boss. The bosses in this game are really, really big and cool and impressive looking. And it just keeps things fresh. Again, comparing to the first game, by the time you were in the second stage, you were already running into recolors. There's only about...
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. And not only you do have just color swapped enemies from previous dungeons, but they do not even have different stats of properties for all of them. In the final dungeon, for example, you have minotaurs. You have a big room with some red, blue, and green ones, and I feel like they do the exact same thing.
20 or so different enemies in that game, and that was including the bosses. This game has so much more. It is just significantly better by leaps and bounds. Not perfect, mind you, but it's a far more functional game, it's a far more interesting game, and it gives you a lot more to expect here. I still wouldn't say this is the best action RPG on the system. I think Sword of Mana has this topped, and depending on how you count...
Sword of Mana? Oh no, I would absolutely disagree. So I'm not talking about Secret of Mana or other titles, but I tested Sword of Mana, and it was absolutely underwhelming in my opinion. What killed me is the fact that for many enemies, you need to switch your weapons, but to do that, you need to go into your full ring inventory and have about 15 inputs just to change your weapons. And sometimes you need to do that multiple times on the same screen to kill all the enemies. That really killed the fun for me.
At the Battle Network games, maybe them, but at least this one is a fairly fun game. The previous one was a slog and at best, barely functional. So
I absolutely agree.
Credit where credit's due. They improved the original by leaps and bounds. The overall presentation to Shining Soul 2 is a little all over the place. Visually, it looks stunning. I think the backgrounds and environments look like they're straight up painted, which is very, very impressive for the GBA.
Yes.
And the character models do look quite good. They reuse a few different enemy models from the first game, but...
No, they reuse all of them. Almost all of them.
Otherwise, everything seems to be brand new here. I did notice one reused environmental texture for one of the side bonus dungeons as well.
No, they also reused, I think, 5 of the 8 dungeons of the first game as side dungeons.
Well, but again, the game looks very, very nice for what you get. Audio-wise, I think it's fairly unspectacular, though. I honestly can't remember any music from the game, and I didn't think it was particularly...
It's funny, I don't see it that way. I actually think that they're pretty catchy, but it's a matter of taste there.
Particularly interesting to listen to either. I think definitely presentation-wise, the visuals are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, whereas the audio lags behind a fair bit. Now, if you want a copy of Shining Soul 2 on the Game Boy Advance, cheapest one I'm seeing right now is about $100. Wow.
No, but what the hell is happening with these prices, man? I swear, for $30 you can have a functional GBA SP with Shining Soul 2 if you're doing right. I swear that's the prices I got.
Wow, this is very, very expensive for what you're getting here. The first game also costs about the same, and this was about the point when I finished
that's
my
still
review and
not
realized,
true.
oh crap,
What are
I
these
was doing research
prices?
on the wrong Shining Soul. Whoops. Because the stickers didn't match up with what I was looking at. Although there are some weird, replicas that use the second game stickers as well, so it's a little bit slightly easier to understand my confusion, I guess. But I think if you're going to get a Shining Soul game, Shining Soul 2 is infinitely better. Like I said, the first game was, at best, barely functional. This is actually kind of good. It gives you replayability. It gives you side quests.
Yeah, the replayability is off the charts.
Interesting extra things to do. Lots of characters. Build potentials. Sure, the actual action element, especially if you want to play defensively, is a little underwhelming to say the least. And yeah, okay, the leveling could be a little bit less drawn out and have every individual level be more significant, maybe give you better leveling options for skill.
So actually when I connect the dots now, I understand what he meant by leveling and the characters having different leveling. So he was talking about how easy it is for some characters to invest solely into one skill compared to others, I guess. By his reasoning, it would be easier to play a spellcaster because you can invest into just one spell and meditate and spam the same spell, whereas for warrior classes you have to invest into 4-5 different skills. That would be far more difficult,
as opposed to just dumping
which
a
I
bunch of
disagree
individual
with,
levels
but I
into one
understand
skill and tying all your
the
equipment
way
to
he's
that.
thinking.
That's terrible. But otherwise, it's a pretty playable game, and it's not bad. The first game, I couldn't recommend at all. This game, yeah, I could see.
Yeah,
recommending
I
it.
do not
at the
recommend the
price
first
it's
game
going
either.
For, but I think it's decent. Like I said, I can think of several action RPGs for the system I would recommend over top of Shining Soul 2, but this one goes far and above.
Well, actually, I have one recommendation if you are not thrilled by Shining Soul 2. One that I started to enjoy recently via testing. It's the Lord of the Rings on the GBA. They're vastly different from their PS2/GameCube equivalents, which are also very cool, but they're not the same. I think that the GB handheld version are better action RPG, whereas the other one are more like God of War styled.
What the first game did.
But I
And this
wouldn't
one's
recommend
actually a
Sword
game
of Mana,
I
really.
would be willing to recommend, provided you could get it at a fair price. I think $100 is a bit absurd. I could see
Yeah,
spending
absolutely.
maybe 20 on it. And
Yeah,
I wanna give a
20 is the
huge
price that
shout
I
out and
got.
Thank you to Jet Wolf for including this in his big box of awesome. We're actually at the bottom of it. Well, sort of. I have one more game. I've got a DS game, but I don't presently have a way to record DS stuff yet. Although I do have a device that I might be able to make work with that, but we'll see. Either way, huge shout out and thank you to Jet Wolf for the big box as well as this game individually. Lots of fun things there. A lot of games I really wanted to play and got a chance to. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate any support this channel gets because I certainly need it. But once again, thank you. This game is good. It's not great, but it's leaps and bounds better than the train wreck that was the first game.
Okay, well, I mostly disagree with what has been said there, but that's also because I got more experience into this game compared to someone that has only tested it one time. It's still a genuine review for how many people might think this game is the first time they experience it. I think I'm gonna stop there because that was actually a pretty interesting counter arguments to a lot of things that I've said in the past. I disagree with because I have experience, not because this person or this person actually were saying stuff that are not true. I absolutely can see why you might think that the first time you try this game. But it's also a huge testament to why you should try multiple characters, is because when you start doing that, you actually understand how this game can be played. And you understand that you do not absolutely need, for example, to max out one weapon skill, especially if we're talking about a spell. Anyway, thank you for watching. And I will see you another time. Do tell me if anyone found that interesting. Thanks for all the creators that have made these reviews, and especially from KBash that I actually mailed, and he told me that was okay to talk about. I didn't ask the other ones, but if they are upset in any way or want to discuss anything, I would be happy to. Anyway, thanks for watching.